Welcome everyone. I'm just double checking the sound and the screen. You should be able to hear me and see me and also my screen. Just checking if everything is working correctly before I jump into the topic of today, which is logo design, one of my favorite things to talk about, and there's a lot to cover. I divided the presentation or this live stream into three topics or three parts. First, we will talk a bit about theory of logo design, or in general, like graphic design theory that applies to logo design and what's very important for that. We will look at a few logo design projects that our students worked on recently, and some exceptionally good ones I would like to highlight, and also some weaker ones, just to be able to show you where what you have to pay attention to when you work on logos. So it's always a one-sided thing. If you are only looking at good designs, you will feel that it's not as motivating to get into doing logos if you only look at great designs, because you will always feel inferior to that. So to be able to learn, you have to look at both good and bad examples. That's a good way of feeling more encouraged and motivated to also create something yourself, and that applies to any type of work, and of course applies to logo design as well. So yeah, we will look at some projects, and I'm also planning to do a bit of a live demo on showing you how I use my iPad to create quick digital sketches for a fictional logo that we will be looking at. And then, so I have already my iPad here. Hopefully it's going to work in the live stream. I have another project on the iPad at the moment, but we will be looking at another one shortly. And then we will also spend some time at the end of the stream talking a bit about the future of logo design, my predictions, my idea, my thoughts about AI that's been introduced recently into Illustrator, so you can now generate vector graphics, and that includes logos as well, directly within Illustrator using the Adobe Firefly generative AI model or tool. And we will also talk a bit about express logo makers, I call them, things that you can find all throughout the internet. There's so many different sites where you can just put in the name of the company and a couple of like attributes of a company, and then it generates hundreds of logos immediately. Now, whether we can call these logos or not is something I would like to discuss, and whether these tools can be used professionally, again, is something that we can debate together. I would love to have an interactive stream, so where we can discuss things. So it's not just me talking, but you guys also let me know what you think. So I am keeping an eye on the chat as we go through this, and I can see already a lot of people joining. That's great. I can see people from Vietnam, Indonesia, Hungary, India, Bangladesh, amazing, Canada as well. We have Montenegro, lovely. So many nice places. Some I've been to, some I would love to go to. There's someone from Detroit. Awesome. So yeah, I always love to do these live streams, mainly because I have the chance to talk to you all live. So yeah, I would like to have this as interactive as possible. So I will stop and ask you questions throughout the stream. You can also help me out when I'm doing the live demonstrations. If you have any ideas on how to create a particular logo, how to make it unique and interesting. And yeah, so without any further delay, let's get started. And like I said, I would like to start off talking about the theory. Now, this might sound boring at first, but without understanding some rules and principles, it's very hard to have a structured workflow. So You can spend hours or even days trying to come up with ideas for a brand. So if you are planning to create a logo design, then yeah, I mean, it can take a lot of time to come up with an idea, and most importantly, without having some structure and concept of what you're doing, you can just be wasting your time. So the theory is there to solidify your ideas and give some groundwork even before you start sketching. Knowing the theories will already help you move faster, more efficiently, and already filter out ideas or concepts that come to your mind even before putting them down on the paper. So that's why it's important, and that applies to all kinds of projects, not just logo design. It's in general in graphic design, it's the same thing, that you should be aware of the principles and rules. So without spending too much on these, first I just wanted to give a little bit of summary of the main categories of logos. It's good to know the terms for them. You can see them here highlighted on the left. So this is probably the easiest way to categorize them. You can see that we have word marks. We have, these are when the name of the company is completely, or name of the brand is completely written, and it's purely typography that is used. It could have some details that stand out from the type itself, but generally we're talking about typographic logos. Then the opposite of this is when we have just a simple image. It could be abstract, it could be organic, it could be any type of image. That's what we would call a pictorial mark. And I'm still gutted that the Twitter logo is now gone, and it's been replaced with a letter mark, the X. And in this case, we could call it a watermark, a word mark, because that's the full name of the brand now. So Twitter's been replaced with that. But normally when we talk about letter marks, they are individual letters put together, whether it's the abbreviation of a company, or it could be other combinations as well. It could be the monogram as well of a person, for instance. But yeah, that's again purely typography most of the time. And then we have combination mark, where we combine pictorial details with textual detail. And then we have mascot logos, like the KFC is a famous one, or Starbucks you can think of, where there is a character that is taking the center stage, and it's very recognizable. It could be a person, it could be an animal, it could be a fictional character like the siren in the Starbucks logo. And then we have emblem logo, where there is a very strong shape, or like a crest that holds together usually type, but it can again include some details, some even a character can be included in that emblem, or pattern, or any other details. And then finally we have the abstract mark, which is very similar to a pictorial mark, but that's when we specifically have something that is not representing anything in particular. It's just creating, using certain shapes, creates an overall aesthetic that the brand can be recognized from. So let's move on and talk a little bit more about the other topics that I collected here. So let me just jump back in. The ideation is something that is at the beginning of every project. You should start with ideation, and this can be done at the same time as researching. So it's always advised to do some research even before jumping into doing some sketching, for instance. But you can do this at the same time, or you can start sketching first, then do some research, then jump back into sketching. It's up to you what you prefer to do. But generally, what is very useful for logo design is to do sketches and do as much as you can, and keep doing this. So don't try to sit down and do hundreds of sketches all at once. It should be something that you keep going back to for a couple of days. possibly even for weeks if it's like a big project, and it's very important that you get it right, because you need to have fresh ideas, and eventually you run out of juice, creative juice I call it. So if you just sit there for hours and hours, eventually you won't have any new original ideas. So it's good to keep coming back and drawing some more ideas, and like I said, the more the better, but eventually you will hit walls, and you will have to move on. And at a point where you feel like you already have a few good ideas, what I recommend to do is to just mark them down. If it's on paper, same way, or digital format if you are doing it on the iPad or in Photoshop or wherever you are doing your sketches, just mark the ones that you prefer to continue with or further explore. And here we can see one of our students, one of our pro member student, Jean's sketches for one of the projects that we have available for our students to go through. If you're interested to find out more about the pro member program, it's something you can find out from our website, but the link will also be available in the description below. We have over 80 projects at the moment, all kinds of projects, from branding to graphic design, to web design, illustration, and our students can submit their work like Jean did, and then we help them move along and then eventually create something exceptional that they can feature in their portfolio. So we really walk them through these projects, and some of our students actually finished most of these projects already. So some submitted around 70, 80 projects, and out of which a few that they chose to feature in their portfolio. We will see one of these later on in this webinar. But yeah, so moving on, when you look at, when you're working on the ideation stage of the design process for logos, it's also good practice to do mind mapping. So you can do this again together with sketching, and this is another example from the same student. So here Jean, besides doing the sketches that we can see here on the right, she also wrote down the words that keywords that come to mind when she looked at the brief. So this brief was about a logo for a coffee house, and it's called Coffee Cat. So she wrote down all the different things about cats. So it's they are furry, they can be lazy, they can be curious, playful, claws, tails, so on and so forth. And then a lot of other words about coffee. And then she tried to combine these together. So instead of just sticking to the two words that appear in the brand name, Coffee Cat, and then just simply trying to play with those two words, she was trying to combine these other words that can be associated with the name of the brand. So that opens up a lot of more opportunities that can be explored creatively. And that led to some brilliant ideas and brilliant designs. So here's just a few of them from Jean. But there's a lot more that she created later on. So yeah, mind mapping and ideation sketching in general is something that you will definitely need to practice and learn for logo design. But like you can see here, there's other examples. Once you learn to do these simple sketches for logos, it's a very valuable skill and useful skill that you can take on for other projects as well. Same principle applies for like book covers. Again, it's always good to come up with some or create some sketches. And in this case, we have much more detailed sketches that the client could choose from. Again, it's one of the projects we have in our Pro Member program. All right, so moving on. I wanted to show the next page that I have here. Now, you may have heard of Gestal Principles or Gestalt Principles. This is this is one of those terms that you probably heard many times if you are interested or keen to learn about graphic design theory. But in general, the way you should think about this is these are like guidelines or again, providing you a structure to analyze and understand logos, and also to think of your own logo designs and try to apply as much as possible of these rules. These rules have been used in graphic design for decades, and it stems from a psychology of how we look at things, how our visual understanding works. So, for instance, with the Unilever logo, which is a brilliant logo in my opinion, here's a couple of things that we can immediately notice. The simplicity, or law of pregnance, it's also called. It simply is that the icons inside the logo, so all of these icons are very simplified, they are very abstract. So it's kept to a very minimal, like that little carrot there, or pepper, or the bee, the bird. They are very simplified, almost abstract. So they don't try to stand out too much, because they need to form this overall shape, the U, which is what we can see here. And that's another rule called figure ground. So you can look at the icons individually, which could be the figure, or you can look at all the details together, creating the letter U, which would be the ground in this case. So it's almost like you can switch back and forth between the two ways of looking at this. So you can see the U, or you can see the little details inside it. And figure ground in general is another rule. I mean, it's something that I have also more examples of, just in case you are not familiar with this term. So the figure usually refers to the elements in focus, and the ground is usually the background, but you can switch back and forth between the two. And there's some great examples here, like this Melbourne Food and Wine Festival, where we can see either the fork or the wine bottles at the bottom. So that's that switching back and forth. Or we have also amazing work from Ole Moss, who illustrated this version of the Jungle Book, or it's a poster, I guess, where we can see the tiger. But if we pay close attention, we can also see that there is actually a whole scene here, Mowgli stepping towards Kaa, being hypnotized. And that's all made up of the lines or the pattern of the tiger's fur. So again, it's what you are looking at. It's the same thing you are looking at, but there's two different things that you can focus on. So that's the figure ground, and it's very important to learn this for logo design. For logos, it can be complex stuff like the Pittsburgh Zoo, where again you can see the tree, or you can also see the gorilla and the lion's head. So it's a very clever use of this figure ground rule. The same thing with the Witch's Kitchen, where you can either see the skull or the table with the pans and the food. And then there's so much additional examples you can find of this, and not just in logos. As you can see, it's used in graphic design in general. Now, moving on, let me go back to the jump back here. Moving on, we also have another term that is also Gestal Principle, closure, which is very important in logos. And it's something that you can't talk about without mentioning negative space. You probably heard of negative space used creatively for logos, and there's lots of examples of this. For instance, the World Wildlife Fund, I think, WWF, the panda logo, like everyone knows. So that utilizes negative space really well, but it's also something where we can see that our mind automatically closes up this shape. So even though it's missing lines here on the top, that's what we call closure, that our mind automatically or instinctively looks for closure. So we like to imagine this being a closed shape or a standalone shape that is not obviously empty on the top, but it's closed up. But the fact that it's kept empty on the top makes it more interesting, engaging, and engaging in a way that it needs the viewer's mind to complete it. And that's also a general rule in logo design, that you want to engage your viewers, your customers. You want them to be involved in understanding your designs. So if you create a design that is very simple and minimalist, that's not a problem, as long as there is some intrigue still left in the logo to figure out or to understand or to put together, piece together, and understand something about the brand beyond the logo itself. So yeah, any way that you can achieve that is going to make your logo more powerful and more memorable. So another great example of closure being used and negative space being used is the Johnny Walker logo, which evolved from what we see on the left to more abstract versions that we currently see in their logo. And I really like this new take on it in the 2015 one. Maybe it has changed since then again, I'm not sure, but it's definitely a very interesting logo right now. And yeah, we can see other examples of closure as well here. But let me jump back again to the other topics I wanted to talk about. So closure, I mentioned negative space. So let me just show negative space a little bit as well. So negative space is essentially anything in your design that is not filled with detail. So we sometimes call it white space, in particular in editorial design, when it's or the paper itself is white and there is nothing printed on it, then we refer to it as white space. But negative space is more of a general term, which doesn't have to be white. So it can be even red, like in this case, the background of this poster is red, but that still would be considered a negative space. So that's not something that we look at being filled. But once again, figure ground is also here, immediately applies. Do we look at the red background and notice that there is actually a foot there? Or do we look at the black shape being the figure, when it will look more like either a sharp knife or a shark in this case? And the same thing here with the hand and the bulb. So negative space and figure ground, rule and closure, these are all connecting to each other, and it's different ways of utilizing the same principles. Formula One logo is another great example of negative space, where we don't actually have a shape for number one. It's just the gap between the letter F and those lines on the right that formulates or encapsulates the number one, which is just an empty space or negative space. So yeah, it's a very clever logo, and there's lots of other examples of negative space. But negative space in general is very important in design, because it creates tension. So when there is for instance, like with this first fold of a website, we have a lot of negative space, but that prepares us for the content that's coming. It creates anticipation, and it gives breathing space, so we don't feel overwhelmed when we look at this first fold of the website. We immediately know what we are going to look at, and it just entices us to go on and scroll further down and see what else is there. So same thing applies to posters like Ford versus Ferrari, a brilliant example of how negative space can be used. And in this case, it's a dominating detail in the design. So it's really emphasized throughout the poster. So there's much more negative space than the design itself, or the positive elements. And same thing applies with the Joker poster, and you can find lots of examples of this. But since we're talking about logo design, I just want to jump back into a few more things that I wanted to go for. So propositional density is another term that you may have heard of. It's actually something that is very, very important for logo design. And it's a fairly simple thing to understand once someone explains it to you. Generally, what you want to do in most logos is that you want to use the least amount of elements or details to convey the most amount of meanings. So you want to have lots of meanings packed into your logo. And the example that I always like to bring up is the Obama 2008 presidential campaign logo, which includes 3 elements: the circle, the blue circle, the red and white lines at the bottom, and essentially the white empty space here in the middle. So that's the those are the surface propositions, we call them. So those are the actual details. But then the meanings hidden inside them, you can see here highlighted in red on the left and the right. There's a lot more. There's actually 10 different meanings that are packed into this. So the circle can represent unity. Red and white lines can represent the landscape, but it can also represent the American flag or waves of grain. The blue represents the sky, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of meaning packed into it. And these details or these meanings that we can find, we call deep propositions. And the general way that you can calculate the propositional density is that you divide the deep propositions with the surface propositions. So in this case, 10 divided by 3, which will give you around 3.3 propositional density, and that is very high. So anything above 1 is already good. You want to aim for at least the same amount of elements and meanings, but if you can go beyond that and this number increases, then you created a much more interesting logo. And what I talked about earlier, those hidden meanings that people need to work a little bit to decipher and understand, is what's going to make the logo stand out and makes it more memorable. Like I said in the beginning of the stream, it's always good to look at weaker examples as well, not just great designs, to understand how these things work. And here is a logo, which is an actual logo. I don't think it's still the logo for St. Francis County. It may still be the same, but here you can see that the surface propositions, the actual details, heavily outweigh the deep propositions, the actual meanings. So they threw so much things in there. They ended up having lots of different things, very chaotic. We don't really know what we need to look at. We might not even notice certain details, yes, so in this case, it's just overwhelming amount of details and no clarity, no focus, and it's basically like someone is trying to, when someone is presenting, for instance, and they are reading exactly what is written down. That's how this feels. So you want people to be engaged, then you need to give them a little bit more satisfaction of discovery instead of just throwing everything there, almost like a mood board. I would call this more like a mood board than a logo. I hope that makes sense. So let's move on. By the way, these are also really interesting. I just thought I put them down here. It was a research conducted. Let me just move this to the side. So the Apple logo example is one of them, but there's many other ones. So they conducted this research asking people to draw the logo of famous brands. So Apple logo is a fairly simple one, but you can still see that there's quite a lot of variety of how people remembered it. And we can see that the more accurate ones are here on the bottom right, and then the less accurate ones are here on the top left. So we have a range of the different ones. But the most important, most interesting thing here is once it's summarized, I think they've done 150 people in this test. We can see that in the end, 20% of them were nearly perfect. And then 16% of them forgot the Apple bite, which is a very important detail in the logo. So they drew it okay, but they just forgot that bite. 22% drew the bite on the wrong side, so they remembered it, but they remembered it being on the wrong side. And then 25% forgot the leaf. And then 31% added an extra detail, the stalk, which is actually not in the original design. So what I wanted to get to with this is that even a very simple logo like Apple is still not remembered by everyone precisely. So the more detail you have in a logo, the less likely people will be able to recall it from their memory. And of course, I'm not saying that all logos have to be minimalist and very simple, but usually these are the most memorable logos and the easiest one to recognize. So, and that's obviously very important because you want people to feel familiar to a brand. So when they, even just from the corner of their eye, they notice a logo that they are familiar with, they will immediately think of maybe buying something from there or checking it out, because that's how consumerism work in general, that you want a hook for people to keep coming back to. And yeah, a logo in a nutshell, or we can think of it as a visual hook that will get people coming back to that particular service or product. All right, so moving on. I think we talked enough about the theory. By the way, if you like to learn about theory, graphic design theory, we have a huge series on it. We have 12 courses, actually 11 courses, but it's probably one of the most comprehensive series of courses on graphic design theory. So the things that I'm showing here is just a fraction of the topics that we cover in there. You can see if I just jump in here, that's just like a simple overview of all the terms and topics that we cover. We go into detail in print design, web and digital design. So if this is something that you would like to learn more about, I highly recommend to check out that series. You can find some of them on Udemy, but the easiest way to access it is from our site. So go on yesimadesigner.com and you can find the graphic design theory series there. We will also leave a link in the description below at the end of the stream. So, moving on, I now would like to talk about some of the projects. And maybe the first thing that I'm going to do here is to give you a little bit of a live demo. So, like I mentioned earlier, we have projects for our students that we give them to work on. So it's usually they get a brief that they can work on, and then they submit their work, and then we give feedback on them. Now, these are all projects or work submitted by various students for the same project, Farmers Market logo design. And they have to use the things that we provide, so the text has to be the same, but as you can see, they all come up with different designs. And a few of them that I would like to highlight are particularly well designed, like this one from Magdalena, one of our students. Here you can see a brief of like a short description of the brief that we provided. So it has to be a circular logo with illustrations, fresh, organic, and natural tone. and yeah, it's like an organic local market established in 1850. And this is the design that Magdalena came up with. Here we can see some of the sketches that she created and some color variations, and then some mock-ups how it could look on actual, like a tote bag and fruit baskets and so on and so forth. So really, really nice and successful design. Here's another one from Jean, the other student we've seen some work from. I wanted to show the final version of those sketches that we've seen earlier. Out of these, I think I preferred this one the most, which is a nice typographic logo. We could say that this is a word mark, but that it has also hidden meaning. So it's like that figure ground rule where we can look at the text, or we can notice that there is actually a chicken here, or a cockerel. So we can see the other designs here as well. But let's also look at this one. This is really interesting take. Completely different style, but very nice take on the same brief. So these projects we have on our portal for our students, and I just wanted to show that normally for these projects I give examples of how I would approach the project, and this was the example that I create, or these were the examples that I created. So I can show you. Let me just play the time-lapse replay, so you can see how I get started sketching these ideas down. I tend to do more simple sketches at first and then do these more refined ones. So at this point I already had done the more quick sketches, so I already had some ideas what I'm going to do, and then I still prefer to use more of like a pencil style drawing, not a very clean outline that you would get, for instance, in Illustrator. So I don't like to jump into Illustrator until I have a very good understanding of the design that I want to create. You can see that sometimes I keep going back and forth. I'm experimenting with things. So at this stage, that's still the whole point. That's why you are doing sketches, because you want to quickly iterate and come up with ways to solve problems. And that's, again, one of the most important things to understand in general about graphic design, that you are not just having fun designing, but you are solving problems constantly. So throughout the design like this more like a crest-like design, you have to encapsulate so much information without making it too overwhelming. So it's always like a balancing act between trying to put the least amount of actual shapes and details in, but convey the most amount of meanings. Again, remember propositional density. So in this case, we have quite a lot of text that we have to work with. So it has 4 words: finest organic farmers market, and it has to also include the location, Barnet, and when the market was established. So that's another additional 2 words, established in 1850. So altogether 6 words. That's a tough one to work with. I don't think it would be possible to do it in any other format than a crest, or this particular type of like lockup, that the style that we can see here I'm working on. And you can still argue that it's a little bit too much for a logo, but that's one of the reasons that why we decided to do this brief, because we want to challenge our students and see whether they can work with a complex brief like this. So yeah, you can see the designs that I created for this, or the initial sketches, and then I moved from this point, and then I continued working in Illustrator. But I want to show you a live demo of me drawing a few ideas. So obviously it's not going to be something as complex as this, because we just wouldn't have the time for it. But let's just say we can come up with something. Maybe we can come up with a fictional name. Like I normally like to have something like a monogram, so a letter mark. So maybe let's do P and A. We can do P and A. It could be anything, so we're just going to write that down, P, A. Okay, so let's just say we have to do a logo for this. And then I am going to, let me just move my iPad a bit closer so I can draw. You probably won't see my face properly now because I will be looking down at my iPad, but I will try to keep an eye contact at the same time. So yeah, let's say we have these two letters. Now, the brush I'm using, and by the way, I'm in Procreate. The brush I like to use normally is something that has more like a pencil feel to it. So something that really feels like I am sketching. So this is the first step that I normally do, that I try to sketch ideas down. So let's just say we need to have these two letters together. So what if we have letter P and then A combined together in a way? What if we have the P and then the A coming down on the other side like this? Would that still be legible? So we have the P and then the A if I just draw a line here. So something like that. Could we work with that? Maybe if we make a little bit of cut on one side like that, will that still look like a P and an A, or will it look like a P and I? It probably will look like that. So what if we do a P like a bit longer, so we elongate this detail, and then we create maybe a little bit of rounded corner here, and then come down with another line like that and have the A on that side. So I try to still want to make sure that it will look like a P but can also look like an A. And maybe we can include serifs as well, so that way we will have a bit more resemblance of typography already showing in there. We can also maybe add a little bit of nod towards the character A. So if we want to combine them together, why not try something like this, where we actually start with the A. So we draw an A, but then we create a P out of this. Something like that. So when I create it like this, it reads more like AP because the A feels to be in front. But look at this. If I just draw over this here and then delete a bit there, you see immediately starts to feel more like a P and an A, because we made it feel like the P is on top of the A. So people will now more likely to read it as P and an A. And then we can combine these letters in many different ways. But what I like to do is once I start to have ideas, I switch to a different brush, which is more like the pen tool. The way it works here in Procreate is that I can draw with it in a more organic way, or I can just drag a line and then hold down on the screen and draw straight lines, or I can even draw curves with it. So I draw a curve, and then if I keep holding it down, I can still move that curve around. So it's almost feels a bit like designing with vectors, but still in a more loose and fun way. So it still gives me that flexibility of making changes faster. So let's just say I want to refine maybe this idea. So maybe there is something that we can explore with the text underneath it. It could maybe even have a little bit of like cut here, a little bit higher, so almost feels like that cylinder. But yeah, that's again something that can be explored later. But let me make my brush a little bit thicker. And let's do this other one. So the other similar idea that we had has the P a little bit further out. That's not a successful shape. Let's just draw this again. So a straight line, another straight line, and then a curve at the end. Zoom a bit closer. Curve at the end. So it's an elongated P, and then we come down with this line here, which is going to be the A. And then what I created here was a gap cutting out from it. So there's the P and the A. And like I said before, we can add a bit of curve here as well. So you can see I just keep going back and forth, refining the idea. We can try to add the serifs as well, and then see if that works. I think my favorite is the third one, so make sure that we do that one as well. So if I do the shape of this, and then we do the shape that will be the P, the detail that is the P, like that. And then we just have to make sure that this fills in front of the other one. So I'm doing the same thing I've done before, with the difference that here I just clean it up a bit. So it's the same concept, but a little bit more cleaned up. So when you have an idea that you like, don't stop there, but keep exploring. So this, again, this whole design, what I could do is that I could have a few of these copied and then created already like as a template, and then experiment with it. So if I go into making a selection, just this bit here, I can copy and then paste. Oh, let's paste it in, and then just move it down, and then again paste and move it down, and then immediately we have 3 additional versions of it. And then what I would do is I would just create just that one last detail differently. So instead of the way I've done it, maybe I can do it a little bit more rounded this way, or I can do the P more coming out that way, or I can do it, let's just do it more like this, and so on and so forth. And then I would just again go in and delete those details there. We just merge this down and merge it down again. And you see immediately, just from that initial idea that we had, we already have some further ideas that we can explore and compare. So that's generally how I would approach this. And then the same idea, maybe instead of crossing it over, we could just have, just very quickly, another idea. We could just have more like a perfect triangle. And then within that, we can have the P aligned like that. So that's, again, looks like there's the P, and then there is also, it can be read as an A, the same shape. So again, trying to keep it very minimal and but still unique and interesting. And I mean, there's just so much ways we can do this. Again, and maybe another idea. We can draw the 2 shapes, almost like a zigzag. We can draw like this, V and A, but then we turn this into a P, like that, and then we can turn this into an A, creating a very similar shape to that curve that we have on the left. So to keep it more symmetrical. So instead of just drawing a line here, I want to make it look symmetrical, and that's why I create the A like that. So it's starting to get more abstract, but again, these are all ideas that can be explored and then can be experimented with. We can again include the serifs on the top and the bottom just to make it more interesting. And yeah, so much variations you can come up with very quickly. So I would like to move on. So that was just a very quick example, but you can see that I follow the same principle whenever I'm designing. So here I just, on another lecture that I did recently, I was just showing ways of drawing our brand. Yes, I'm a designer, coming up with new ways of maybe turning or creating a new logo variation on it. And I like to explore with different brushes, different alignments. I'm using a grid in this case to try to align the text to it. But what you need to do is don't stop and just do the same exact idea in many different ways. You want to give yourself complete freedom to explore whatever comes to your mind, and then start filtering out the designs that work. So for instance, in this case, I feel like there's already a few good ideas here, but currently they still feel weak. They would have to be explored, they would have to be further refined until we can start calling them potential designs that can end up in a final logo. Any questions so far before we move on? Feel free to use the comments. By the way, I can see a question about if anyone has limitations of watching the stream. Of course, you don't. You shouldn't have. If you have access to YouTube, then you can watch it from anywhere you are. So yeah, if you have any questions about the things that I mentioned so far, please let me know. I can see someone would like to learn user interface design. That might be something that we cover in the future. Can we design a sheep logo? I don't think we will have time for that, but I mean, let's just do that quickly. I'm going to jump back in here. Let's see. So instead of drawing shapes in this case, this way we will be drawing a character. So again, I try to keep it as simple as possible. So let me try to draw it. First, I will draw it with my other brush. Okay. So I try to keep it as simple as possible. And I like to exaggerate whenever I'm designing, especially for logos. So it will almost feel like a cloud. Okay, so that could be a sheep. Right, and the tail. Just delete this here, make the tail a bit longer. Okay, so how can we make this even more simple? So I would want the shape to be immediately recognizable. And at the same time, what I'm trying to do is also trying to create already in the back of my head, I'm thinking to try to have this fit into a circle. So that's, again, circle is a perfect shape that is identified with most people as being the ideal shape for any design. So if I make the shape more flat or more like a rectangle, it wouldn't feel as aesthetic as if it's more closer to a circle, a perfect circle. So that's just, again, an idea here behind the way I drew it. But then we can again make a copy of this. Just actually, instead of copying, I'm just going to draw another version of it. So let's just draw the sheep another way. So I would draw it from a different view. No, that's not the way I wanted it. thinking of drawing it grazing, but yeah, I don't want to waste too much time. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Instead, I'm just going to show you, because I think this is actually quite good the way it is. And in case there is text that we have to put into this logo, it actually already has the place for it. So if I were to, I'm just gonna test this now quickly. If I were to remove this detail here, will it still read as a sheep? I think it probably will, if we have a bit, maybe rounding down some details here. Maybe this can come in a little bit further. Yeah, something like that. We could even have the mouth in here, a smile. But yeah, generally, what I'm looking for here, maybe we can get rid of these details, so we don't really need depth in this logo. It will still work without it. I just drew the some of the legs in front, some of the legs behind to create depth, but I don't think that's necessary. What I think we could do instead is to include the text. So if the brand is called sheep, that's actually something that we could easily fit in here. So we could have more of a condensed type that would still be legible. And fit inside like that. But to make it even more clever, we could combine the text with the design itself, or with the illustration itself. So we could actually have the P maybe forming part of the sheep. So we could have this one coming down here, and then have that shape coming down there. And then already we start to have an interaction created between the type and the design. So yeah, and the same thing can be done with the S as well here at the front. So we could actually have that S connecting into the design as well, something like that. And then we can maybe just get these down a bit, just to make it a bit more following the shape that we need. Yeah, there you go. So that was completely random. It was just from one of the comments, but it's already shows how you need to think outside of the box, but still try to apply most of the rules that we work with. And I can already see a potential in having even the 4 legs here. So maybe there's obviously vertical lines in the text. So we have one, there's one here, 2, 3, 4, 5. This could actually end up being the tail, and this could be the 4 legs. If I were to continue and follow along this concept of combining the type and the silhouette of the sheep. So yeah, these details can all be simplified and then continued and work together. But Phil is saying, I can see a couple of questions here. Butterfly logo. Would the process, someone's asking, would the process differ? For example, you had to design a complete brand guideline. So yeah, brainstorming, thinking of ideas of logos and such. Yeah, I mean, for a complex, a full brand guideline, you wouldn't just start with the logo. You would first establish really what the brand is about, and then most likely you wouldn't work just on the logo itself, but you would already work on a lot of various elements all at the same time. And for this, I actually have a good example. So this is one of the other projects that we have in our pro membership program. This is from Magdalena, who worked on the brand identity and packaging design project for this fictional brand we came up with called Choco Rica, which is a chocolate. And then we can see that the logo created for it is this circular design, but it has a couple of different variations. It has a more horizontal version as well, this other lockup that we can see here, and then it also has lots of additional patterns and compositions, badges, we could call these sub badges and badges, that could even end up being a pattern. And then we can see her showing her process and coming up with different flavors as well, different illustrations. She has done an amazing job on this project, and I love how it all turned out. We can see them on these mock-ups showing as stickers, the different designs. Again, we can see the packaging, how it would look like, ribbons or all the different elements, like even the poster, how it could be advertised. So yeah, all I wanted to say here is that the when it comes to a more complex brand guide, where you have to also think of the color palette and additional elements that are created if you are creating all of these yourself, then it's follows the same principle, but I would say in this case you would spend more time researching. You would conduct some interviews with employees of the company, managers, and really try to understand the brand, what they are about, the principles of the brand, and then you just basically spend more time in the research phase before you jump into ideation. And the logo itself is not the brand. The logo is just a simple element of the visual identity of a brand. The brand is much more than that. So yeah, there's a lot of things that goes into it. It's a much more complex topic. So I don't think I'm going to be able to go into much detail on that, but it's a very good question. And this is again something that I discuss in much more detail in the graphic design theory course. Let's see. Yeah, I can see more questions coming. Can I make a logo with the W? Alexandra is asking, what will be the impact of AI in graphic design? That's actually something I wanted to discuss. So I'm going to show that in a moment. And yeah, I can see Ben is answering that. Yeah, Magdalena is great. So yeah. Let me jump back in here because I have a couple of things I wanted to show. So first of all, if we go into Illustrator, since someone asked me to do that logo of the sheep, let's see what Illustrator generative AI would do with this request. So I'm going to put this prompt in here. I just have this rectangle, and I'm just going to say logo, logo design, or logo of showing a sheep, and let's say minimalist logo of a sheep. Maybe that's probably the best way of putting the prompt. Yeah, minimalist logo of a sheep. Let's just see what we get out of this. So I don't know if all of you know this, but the generative features included in the Adobe products will actually be assigned to credits. So if you are a Creative Cloud subscriber, from the 1st of November, I believe, is when it's going to start being based on credits. For now, it's still completely free, but eventually it's going to be a feature a bit similar to using stock graphics, but you will have, I think, 1,000 credits per month. And I don't know how much credits it's going to cost to create something like this, but I believe it probably costs 3 credits because you can get 3 different designs. And this is actually the first official generative AI tool, I would say, the one we have here in Illustrator, that actually produces the artwork directly in vector format. And out of the three, actually, this is not that bad. I would say it's quite good considering what I wrote. Minimalist logo of a sheep. Yeah, I think that is actually quite close to what I wanted. It's very different to what I drew. So if you remember on my iPad, the design that I created and this one, two very different designs. But what I think about, at least currently, of generative AI is that it's a good way of conducting your research. So I wouldn't call this being part of the workflow, but it's almost like if you type in something in Google, in this case, let's just do this quickly. So I jump back in here and then we just type in sheep logo, right? And then you go into images. Of course, you will get lots of different designs. So I don't think generative AI is much different to doing this that we already are used to. So when we are researching, looking at different ideas and concepts, just browsing for the design on Google is very similar to this, how generative AI tools work. So of course I can hit generate again, and then we could still fall back to that first design that we liked. So the first one, and then we will get another 3, and then we can check these out as well. Okay, so this is quite nice. We have another one. Yeah, that looks quite good. And then, all right, so this one doesn't really look like a sheep, but this surprisingly is quite good. Again, I see potential in this. So it's giving me ideas. And what's interesting about generative AI is that although it's based on existing designs, in terms of in case of Adobe, they are only using licensed illustrations for this feature, or Adobe Firefly, that they have on Adobe stock, and some additional sources, but they are all legitimate, and they all have the rights to use these to train their generative AI model, which is a bit more transparent and more agreeable or acceptable compared to Midjourney, for instance. I can just quickly bring up Midjourney, since that's something that I've been experimenting with quite a lot. I have it here ready. So if we just drop that in here, Midjourney is still running within Discord, so you can't do it as easily as just going into Illustrator, but let's just do the same thing. So minimalist logo of a sheep. One thing that most generative AI tools are still struggling with is to include text correctly. So if I were to say that it should also have the text written inside it, sheep, like I did in my iPad sketch, that would cause problems, but already it will have some issues, I think, because we said logo, it would maybe just add some random text inside. Some of the tools I've seen already doing a good job with text online. I think DALL-E 3 is doing quite a good job at it. But yeah, so once again, this is what we got out of Midjourney. And then we could do additional experiments with different tools. But in general, what I would say is that although it's good to have access to these Gen AI tools for experimentation, ideation, and research, they are not going to replace the creative ideas that you can have yourself. So remember, when I got that comment, I came up with this design, and I still believe that this could be, although it's not refined, but this could still be the most original out of all the ones that we've seen generated by AI. All the other ones are fairly, or I mean, they don't really stand out. They are not memorable. While if we go back to maybe some of these ones that we see here on Google, again, some are very organic, so not organic, very unoriginal. There are still some really clever ones. For instance, I've seen one like this one is really cool. It's more like a ram than a sheep, but it's still really cool. I like that design. And then yeah, there's a couple of good ones like this one and the black sheep, using negative space. Very nice little design, quite creative and unique. But yeah, all I'm saying is that, in my opinion, generative AI tools, at least at the moment, are not replacing the ideation stage. They can be part of the ideation stage, so they can be just a different avenue that you are doing your experiments and ideas, and it can influence your design, but you shouldn't fully rely on it, because then in a way you give up control. It's almost like if I were to just look at Google and pick, I don't know, one of these and then and try to copy it and maybe just change a subtle little detail, that's again a very weak approach, and it's not to mention that you shouldn't just steal ideas directly. However, what you can do is to collect ideas or designs, existing designs that you like, put together a board of those. You can call it a mood board. Maybe, let's say, 20 designs that you like, and then you assimilate those designs and try to come up with something new based on those. So those are your references, those are your inspiration, and then you combine them. At least 3 or 4 of those should be merged and combined into a new idea. And there is not, it's impossible to create something completely new. So there is no point in turning a blind eye to everything that exists right now and just completely shut out every type of influence and focus on what you can do yourself without looking at anything. That's not a good way of designing. Although you can try it like that first, but then you have to be open to existing designs, and you have to analyze those designs and understand why some work better than others, and then, like I said, assimilate them, like digest them in your mind, and then try to create something new based on that. So if you fully rely on generative AI, then you lose that control of your creative process. So you shouldn't rely fully on a particular tool. Like the same way, even when I'm sketching, I'm not relying on a particular brush. I like to experiment with different brushes, even though it's just a rough sketch. Even just changing the brush already give me a little bit of a different style or different approach, which can lead to unexpected results, and that can lead to interesting designs. So yeah, use generative AI as part of your research and ideation process, but don't fully rely on that, at least at the moment. This is my advice. Hopefully that makes sense. I can see some people commenting that AI is bad, in terms of, I guess, like in terms of what was created in these designs. Here is an interesting article, and an illustrator I really admire and been following for a long time, von Glitschka, who is also an instructor and has a lot of amazing courses. I've learned a lot from him as well. He wrote an article. He was at Adobe Max last week, and he wrote an article about his opinion on this new generative AI feature in Illustrator. And what I love about what he's done here is that he's showing some of the logos he created or his company created, and then comparing those with the designs he could create using the Gen AI feature in Illustrator. So we can see the Dungeons and Dragons logo that they created, and then the same thing with the prompt red dragon ampersand fire flat. This is the closest he got to what he had originally imagined for this design. Then we can see a couple of other ones. Again, always on the top, you can see the original design he created or his company created, and then we can see the AI version below. This is a great example where the lion at the bottom, I'm just going to zoom a little bit closer, we can see it better. So that lion at the bottom, you could say it's a very nice and detailed design. Has a little bit of like unnecessary details as well in it. It almost feels like a live traced thing or image trace thing that you would get in Illustrator when you just like trace a pixel image. So it has those artifacts, weird details that can be obviously easily refined. However, it will never have that pure or purity, we could call it, that we see on the logo above it. It's not just that it's more simple and more minimalist, but it just condenses the information much better. So again, in terms of propositional density, the one on the top gets a much higher mark than the one below it. Generally, it's the same thing. So again, here the prompt was flat, lion head, American flag, graphic, simple. So the prompt is great. It got really close to what the original logo was, but far from the quality and purity of what we can see on the top. And then, yeah, just a few additional examples. Very different logos again. Again, the top is the one that's designed by the Illustrator, and the one below is the Gen AI version. And then, and this is a good example as well. It's funny, he actually said that the word ass was not allowed to be used in the prompt, even though it in this context it's the donkey, or just another word for a donkey. But yeah, it's obviously the brand itself is a clever play on this. So yeah, but in general, the conclusion of von Glitschke was that generative AI in Photoshop is already useful. It's something that he's using already on a general basis. But when it comes to anchor points and paths in Illustrator, it feels like clip art from the mid-1990s at the moment. But I have to give it to Adobe that they were the first to come out with an AI, a Gen AI tool that directly creates vector details, and especially within a tool that we are all familiar with, Illustrator. I agree with this. That it has still a long way to come or long way to go until it will become directly useful in someone's workflow. At the moment, it's not much different to actually searching for examples in Google, in my opinion, or on Pinterest or Behance or Dribbble. Yeah, so let's see. I'm just looking at the comments a bit. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I see that most of you agree with what I've said, so I'm not going to spend too much time on reading the comments. Instead, I wanted to show you another quick experiment. We will be wrapping up soon. I'm planning to do another 10 more minutes, and we should have time for questions as well if you have any. You can already start asking questions now because we are going to wrap up very soon. Before we finish off, I just wanted to make sure I mention, since this live stream is sponsored by BenQ, I just wanted to show quickly a recent video. If you haven't seen it already, we published this video of our studio. This is where I'm sitting right now. That's my desk. and I just wanted to show my setup. I have been using BenQ monitors for over 5 years now with my Mac. On my main desk I have an iMac, like you can see here, see it on the left side, and the reason that I like these monitors mainly is because they can be really well synced, the colors to the Mac monitor. So whether I'm using a MacBook or my iMac, the color matching is really good. So you can actually find a color mode. I'm showing it here, which is it's called MBook, which very closely matches the colors on the computer itself. And that's very important because you don't want to have two very different colored monitors. And there's more detail and more information you can find out about if you are interested, both the monitor and my setup. I'm actually showing here another generative AI illustration that I've done of this landscape that you can see currently on the screen. That was also created with a combination of Midjourney and Photoshop. But yeah, so jumping back to my board, I see that I have a couple of additional things here that I wanted to mention before we finish off. These tools, so similarly to generative AI, and in terms of the future of logo design, so that was another question someone asked. So where is logo design heading towards? One of the other examples that you can find, again, this one is by Adobe. Adobe Express has a lot of these convenient, quick tools that can generate things for you. In this case, it's the Logo Maker. It's a fairly new one, I believe. Let's just say we want to create a logo for the same company. So my what would be this sheep business be? It would be a food business. My food business is called Sheep, and my slogan is no slogan. Let's just go with that, and we want to have it, let's make it bold. And okay, so there is already no sheep illustration here at all, just food. All right, let's just choose one of these, maybe this one. Okay, so it puts these designs out there, creates so many variations, so many different colors, but in general it's just so random and so soulless, I would call these designs. There's nothing to them. It's similar to, I don't know, it's similar to if I were to restrict myself and give myself only, I don't know, 1% of the creative capabilities that I'm able to, I would probably create something like this. So it's again taking the actual person out of the process shows in the results. I'm sure these tools will also improve, and I'm sure they will get smarter and smarter, but I've been seeing these tools for a while now. For a couple of years, there's Canva as well. There's lots of other tools like this online, these quick and magical logo makers, but none of them impressed me so far. I've seen maybe a few good examples that by accident it created something more memorable, but most of the thing that it creates, so I would say 99.99% is just noise. I would call these. They are not really they are not even worthy of considering as concepts or ideas that you can then explore further. So what I want to say is that you shouldn't feel discouraged that there are tools like this out there, both the Gen AI tools and both of these like Express logo makers, because they are not going to affect you as long as you have the skill to express yourself creatively. So if you work in a way that you just copy paste things, then I guess these tools are similar and might fit well in that workflow. But I believe most of you who are watching my channel are on the other end of the spectrum. So you want to be creative, you want to express yourself instead of relying on these tools. So these are more just a limitation than actually accelerating the work that you do. So all I'm saying is that, and you don't have to be an exceptional designer to beat these tools. I would say already at least 9 out of 10 of our students currently that we teach, and we have hundreds of students right now in our pro membership program, at least 9 out of 10 of them would easily beat both the Gen AI and the Express Logo Maker tools. If I allow them to, let's say, spend an hour on exploring some initial ideas, they would easily beat these. And even if at first glance maybe some of these generated logos may look more professional, that's just because they have more polish on them. But the soul of them, the original concept in them, will easily be beaten by the actual people or the students in this case. Again, I hope that makes sense. I just want to make sure that you don't feel discouraged or feel like you lost motivation to learn logo design in particular because of these things. But I firmly believe that it's not going to change a lot. Maybe some companies and some clients will find that it's cheaper to rely on Gen AI, and they would just use or one of these Express logo makers. But even then, it's still better to find someone online, like even on Fiverr, find a person who actually cares and put some effort into the work. It's another question whether they are going to use these Gen AI tools or not for the design, but let's not go into that. The best resource, I wanted to end the live stream on this, best resource for looking for inspiration, in my opinion, for logo design is Dribbble. I love Dribbble, and there's some amazing work out there, and I found so many amazing artists and learned so much just by analyzing their work. So Dribbble is probably the best place. Of course, Behance is really good as well. And two standout artists that I would like to highlight in this discussion. One of them is Eddie Lobanovsky, who is the founder of Unfold. His work is just brilliant. Like he's doing logos, UX design, user interface design as well, all kinds of design. But highly recommend to check out his work. So if you look for him on Dribbble, I'm sure you will find his work inspirational. And then another one is actually someone I've met and actually even worked with in the past, is the founder of Fried Cactus Studio. He's Aaron Leah, and he's an amazing artist, creating more of this hand-drawn style designs, whether it's logos or general illustration or packaging. But yeah, his work is also brilliant. And he recently released a course, which I believe is on Domestika. So if you like his work, I recommend to check that one out. So yeah, just checking if he has a... there's no pictures of him in here. Maybe under about. Yeah, there is a picture of him. Yeah, so yeah, I wanted to just highlight these two artists, and also mention that if you want to learn about animated logos, we actually did a video recently, I think 2 weeks ago, with my friend Ina. We worked on a course together on using Adobe After Effects and Illustrator to create animated logos. If that's something that you want to learn about, make sure to check out that video. It's already available on our channel. It's a great discussion on how this workflow, how how to approach this type of work and what you need to do in what skills you need in Adobe After Effects to be able to create things like this. And yeah, in general, we just analyze some of the standout examples of animated logos. Okay, and just finally, before we wrap up, wanted to look at the comments. So what software do I recommend for someone who wants to practice? If yes, so it's a cheap software or free software. There are lots of alternatives nowadays, and I believe, I mean, there are several free ones that I know of. Let me just think of, I think Curve is one if you are using an iPad. Curve is a really good one, but I think Photopea released just recently their Vector, maybe it's called Vector P, sorry, not Pia, Vector P, I think. Is it called Vector P? Vector P, online vector editor, there you go. Yeah, so if we choose new project, and then, yeah, so it all runs in the browser as well, so it's completely browser based, and you can, yeah, there's some templates here, but if I just choose let's just choose one of these. So sure, I want an empty one. Can I start with an empty one? Create. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, I mean, it already looks a bit like Illustrator, but on the web. By the way, Illustrator on the web is also something that is on the web is something that is, I think, currently still in beta. Let me see. It's also something that you can access, I believe, even without a Creative Cloud. Yeah, you just have to sign in. You have to have an Adobe account, but you don't necessarily have to have a Creative Cloud license for this. So that's also one that you can check out. Adobe Illustrator Beta, it runs on the web, but Vector P is one that's completely free, and there's a few other ones. I'm sure, yeah, GIMP is a good one. Someone's mentioned it, and I'm pretty sure I tested a couple of other apps as well on the iPad that worked well. I believe the one that was free was called Curve. That was really good. Used to be called Vectornator, but they renamed it to Curve. Let's see other questions. Most of the other comments were made about AI. Pam is saying a company will lose a lot using AI because they won't get color versus black and white versions, as well as CMYK versus RGB versions for web. Designers bring so much knowledge you won't get from AI. Yes, and that's just one of the many facets that's going to be missing when someone is relying on an AI creating their logo or any other design. Yeah, it's easy to think of a design as a final product, as a finished product, but there's so much more that is required, like for a logo as well. There's so much more, like variety, like Pam said, is needed. Some logos need lots of different variations, the more horizontal, vertical, badge, and then avatar size, circle, small version, minimal version, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's also another good point from Pam. Yeah, and then there's Inkspace. Cyprian is saying, oh, Cyprian is here. Nice to have you. Cyprian is one of our students. And then Affinity Designer is, I think it's not free anymore. I have it actually on my iPad. the Affinity Designer 2 was recently released. I recently found out that Affinity, the company, is actually based in the UK. I think Nottingham they are based in. So yeah, it's a British company. I didn't know. I would like to visit them maybe one day if I'm up there north. But yeah, it's a good thing that we have more options nowadays than just Adobe, because it helps to direct the industry a bit better than having really like a monopoly of one tool. That I will have them all in the description for those watching this later, but I can just drop in the a few of those links that I've opened up. Illustrator on the web as well here. So yeah, for those who would like to check these out, you can find it here. I also put this link for that article from Fonglichka, which I mentioned, and I also put in Magdalena's work that we looked at, which was the one that I have currently on my screen. But yeah, any other links that you need, let me know. I'm really glad that we had so much people active on this stream. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys also find it useful. And in 2 weeks, we will have another stream, and that will be about illustration. So recently, we've covered, I think the first one we did was on editorial design. We did one on editorial design. That was the last one. The one before that was about AI. The first one was about AI, actually. You can find these live streams, the recorded ones, on our channel. There's a separate category I created for it, so you can go back and check those out. And then, yeah, the next one I'm doing is going to be about illustration. Again, I will try to do the same format, a bit of theory, a bit of live demo, a bit of references, inspiration, examples, and some open discussion about illustration in general. So there was a question missed. Can you repeat that question, please? Oh, yeah, I can see it. In today's age, how should a designer market themselves? Given that designers are generally interdisciplinary, should their profiles showcase just design works, or can they have more freedom? Would an ideal solution be uploading portfolio works on a personal site, making the social media profiles more focused on interactivity, fun, and exploration? Yes, I think a great way of marketing yourself is really showcasing your work on social media, and that includes LinkedIn for sure. LinkedIn is good, but Instagram, Pinterest, the more exposure you can get, the better. And I think nowadays these short format videos like stories work really well. So if you created an interesting design, like for instance Magdalena wants to showcase this design, she could easily have, besides having a nice overview that we have here, which is like a portfolio piece, there could be a couple of short format videos, stories shared on all the social media channels that it possibly can be uploaded to. And nowadays, I see that more and more that companies would find artists through social media. So that's just the way it is. All the creative directors are also using social media, one or more social media channels, and they eventually will find, or some of these important decision makers will come across your work, and if they really like it, they will pick you for an upcoming project. So I think that's a very good way of marketing yourself, showing quick glimpses of the work that you're currently doing, and just keep sharing them. You will build up a follower base anyway, and then the more exposure, the more likely you will be contacted eventually by people. Like, for instance, with us, although I am a designer myself, I mainly work on teaching people nowadays. But because I have over 600,000 people following me on YouTube alone, I get so much opportunities to work with brands and work on actual client work. They approach me to design logos, for instance, out of which many I have to deny or decline because I just don't have the time for it. Or what I actually ended up doing, and I think Cyprian, who's here with us in the chat, also worked on one of these client projects. I can quickly just show this as well as a final note. If I jump back, one logo project we had was for a clinic, an NHS clinic, which had some amazing designs, and these were all created by our students, and we worked directly with the client. We helped the students refine their work, but got the client involved as well, and then we ended up creating the final design based on that together with our students. I believe in this one it was Öznur who managed to create the final design, the one that was finally chosen. So something similar to what we see here. But yeah, so yes, there is Cyprian. I remembered you worked on this as well. So yeah, all I'm saying is that, again, the more exposure you get, social media, the more likely people will start approaching you, and you are getting clients. Great stuff. Cool. Okay. Awesome. Where can we find fonts that are shown on the screen now? I'm not sure whether the ones you are interested in, the ones that you see here or not. It's a tricky question. Adobe fonts is great, but a free font search that I still use now and then is Dafont. Dafont.com is a good one. Again, there's so many other ones, but Dafont, I think, is one of the oldest one, and they have some really good quality fonts there, so highly recommend to check it out. I dropped the link in here as well. So that was for one of the comments that was looking for this. All right. We really have to wrap up now, so thank you guys for joining me. I hope I will see you in the next one, and if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, make sure you do, because we have lots of new content coming out. Next week will be a very cool Illustrator video I've worked on. I can't wait for that to be released. It's actually a plugin, I really like a gem that I found, a plugin that's amazing, and we are giving out free plugins. I actually contacted the creator, and he offered to give out some free access plugins. I mean, free access to this plugin, and also we will have additional discount for people who want to buy it once the free options run out. So yeah, that's gonna be released next Monday. So keep an eye out for that video. Even for really like veteran Illustrator users, it's going to be an awesome thing, but anyone new getting into Illustrator will find it also very useful. All right. Cool. I will have to wrap up now. Thank you so much again for joining, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.